Morning has come, arise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope it shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. A new day dawns, once more the gift is given. Wonder fills this moment shared together. The light of peace it shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. Open our eyes to see that life abounds. Open hearts to welcome it among us. The light of love it shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home.
Good morning and welcome to Live Oak Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Reverend Joanna. I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad that we have an opportunity once a week to come together for sacred time where we can be reminded of our highest values and where we can connect with each other and draw strength from each other. If this is your first time here, a special welcome is going out to you. I want you to know that we're aware that it might be kind of strange getting to know a community at this time and in this way, but you are so eagerly welcomed here. We hope that you can be a part of our community. To use a certain phrase that we use here in the South, we hope that you will find your religious home here. And we have something special set up just for you. After the service, we have a Zoom room that is set up. It's called Just for Visitors. And if you click on that link, you'll go in. It's not overwhelming. There'll just be a couple of people in there, and they're just there to answer any questions that you might have about Live Oak and things that are available or any other questions you have. There's also a short form. If you would like more information, you can fill it out. All it's going to ask you for is your name and your email address. You can find the link to that on our website at liveoakuu.org. And if you fill it out, then we will send you some information about Live Oak, let you know how you can get more connected with other things that are happening here, and again, answer any questions you might have. This month at Live Oak, we are talking about the theme of a continuum between imagination and reality, because right now we need both of those. We need to be able to keep our feet planted in reality and know what is really happening, be able to get good sources for information. And face that reality. And at the same time, we need to be able to have our imagination so that we can envision solutions to problems and imagine a better world that we can help create. We're going to begin our service, as most UU churches do, by lighting our chalice. And so if you have a chalice or a candle at home, I invite you to draw it near as we all light our chalices together.
into a shrine. With laughter drown the raucous shout, and though these sheltering walls are thin, may they be strong to keep hate out and hold love in.
Our big idea today is a story of some real life heroes, kids. So this is set during the time of World War II. And Germany was at war with England. And so many families had sent their children and teens out to live in the country with families, many of them complete strangers. And they were doing that to try and protect the kids, but then nothing happened for a year. None of those expected air attacks materialized. And so many of the kids began streaming back into London. First a handful, and then hundreds, and then thousands. And then things changed. This story is about a particular group of kids who were living in the East End of London, which was the poorer area. And on September 7th, 1940, that was when what is called the Blitz began. And planes began flying over, dropping bombs and incendiary devices. And incendiary devices, when we think of bombs, we think of something that, like drops on a building and kerblow, it's all gone. And that definitely happened. But urban areas are often targeted during war for small devices that will simply set fires. Except that when you have thousands of them, that can cause a lot of fires. So on that night, a 17-year-old boy named Patsy Duggan and his sister Marjorie, who was 13, gathered up their friends, and they went out into it with pails of sand and ropes and axes to try and do what they could to save their town. They put out fires, they helped people who were under the rubble, they helped others escape from burning buildings. They were even going into burning buildings themselves. The Blitz continued, and so did the work of these kids. Patsy was kind of the leader of the group, and they called themselves the Dead End Kids. And he would take children as young as 10 to help out. And they were doing this all with no adult supervision, which meant that they took a lot of risks that they shouldn't be taking. And they suffered casualties. They were injured. At least a couple died. But they were going out night after night after night doing extraordinary acts of heroism. One night there was a structure that had been hit that had about 30 horses inside. They managed to get them all out to safety. Another night there were 236 people who were in a shelter that got hit, and they were able to get into them and help them out and help lead them through the town that was still being bombed. Over and over, night after night, raid after raid, they were out there doing whatever they could to put out fires and to save lives. We grown-ups want to protect our kids, our teens, and we absolutely should. I mean, a society should be judged on how it cares for its youngest members. But we shouldn't lose sight of this. When things happen in the world, big, catastrophic, unprecedented, aren't we tired of that word, things, kids are part of that too. We can't protect them from knowing everything that is happening. And there is heroism in what they do. To Live Oak's kids and teens, I want you to know that we see you. and we know that you are a part of this. Please do not run into any burning buildings, but that's not what's needed right now. What is needed right now is actually staying home whenever you can and taking shelter, wearing a mask when you need to go out. And I know it's hard, but I want you to know that we see you and we know that you are doing this day after day. You are being heroes. And let me tell you, every time you put on that mask, there's no telling how many people you are protecting when you do that. Every time you make a sacrifice and you don't go over and see other kids, again, you are protecting our entire community. And right now, some of the big acts of heroism are pretty ordinary things. Simply being really patient, which I know is hard right now when your teachers and your parents and your grandparents and other caregivers are trying to make the internet work and it's just not. Your kindness and cheerfulness and patience is heroic. There will come a time when we will tell stories about all of this. You will tell stories too. And when you tell your story, please remember you were a part of this and you were a hero.
They'll be happy to know that you saw me go.
Something that may be helpful when we're going through a difficult time is to look to the past. We can look at our own past. When have we gone through something as challenging as what we are now going through, and what are things that we learned through doing that, but also the past of humankind. Let's look into history with that eye for the continuum between imagination and reality and see if there are things that we can learn from other times that could be useful now. Today, what I'm going to be talking about was the period of the Blitz in England. I actually found many different parallels to what we are going through now, and I think that there are some lessons that we can extrapolate from that time. The Blitz happened during World War II. England was at war with Germany, and they knew, based on what Germany had done in World War I, that they needed to prepare for attacks by air. And so they did that. They tried to send as many children who were in the large cities, and especially London, out to the country, as well as others who were especially vulnerable. They worked to get gas masks for everyone who would be in the cities, even babies. And the whole issue of bomb shelters was a significant one. How were they going to handle that? And by and large, what they did is they had what were called Armstrong shelters that could be kind of half buried in a person's backyard, and that's where they could escape to. They prepared, and then they waited, and they waited. The period between September of 1939 and September of 1940 has often been called in England, and was at the time, the phony war, because the air assaults were not happening yet. People got impatient. I think we can see some parallels here. And many of the families, the children who had gone to the country, began coming back home. And so when the Blitz began in September of 1940, the whole London area, especially the poorer parts of town, were filled not only with adults, but also with children. The Blitz would last from September until May, 8 months. I realize this can feel far away from our experience right now. We don't have to worry about bombs dropping down on us. But to be fair, during the Blitz, they also didn't have to worry that hugging another person might lead to their death. And in England, as of right now, more people have died of coronavirus than died in the Blitz. But there can be comfort in hearing about the stories of others. And again, there are some lessons that we can draw. So here are some of the lessons that I think we should look at that happened during the Blitz. Number one, when you're going through a large-scale societal trauma, you don't have to be a perfect saint. Yes, we absolutely should try to be better and kinder and more generous. But all of those little annoyances that we had in the past don't suddenly disappear. A paper cut still hurts no matter what you're going through. And so it was with them. There's a book called Blitz Diary, and it's the personal accounts of those who actually survived that time. One of them, Anne Maxton Graham, writes about the time of the blackout, and she says, "Our hall and stairway had such odd windows that they couldn't be curtained, and the only thing to do was to cover them up with thick black cloth, firmly thumbtacked around the edges. We used to untack a small corner in the morning and pin it back, and then down it went again as soon as it grew dark. Oh, the thumbtack holes in my nice white paint! I felt I couldn't bear it at first, but after a few days, one hole more or less didn't seem to matter." Number two, life continues in ordinary ways, even in extraordinary times. And if we can manage to find some pleasure in the day-to-day, it's only going to strengthen us and help us as we get through it. Anne goes on to talk about how she was living alone by that point, but she had neighbors who were around the corner and they would continue seeing each other. She laughed about the juxtaposition of it on one hand being really ordinary with some extraordinary elements. She writes, "The nights I didn't go to them, they came to me. I made myself laugh, starting out to spend a pleasant evening, gas mask over my shoulder, knitting under my arm, flashlight in one hand, and a cane in the other." Number 3, not all people become any the wiser or any more self-sacrificing than they were beforehand. This is one of those especially romantic myths that we create when we look back when people went through exceptionally hard times. We see only the rosy picture, right, of everyone banding together. And then we compare it to what is going on in our world at that time and some of the people who are not quite measuring up. And we act like this is something so unique. Like back then, everyone was perfect, and now we just have so many more people who are missing the mark. But it's not so, and reading some of these stories makes it really clear. Anne talked about the people who during the blackout were not closing their curtains and dousing their lights. She says, "How horrified and indignant we were if we saw a chink of light from a neighbor's house. The wardens and police were wonderful and spotted them almost at once. Sometimes they weren't very polite about it and roared, 'Put out that light!' I couldn't blame them, for people were tiresome about it and acted as if they had been mortally insulted. Instead of being sorry and apologetic, they were rude and unpleasant when told there was a light showing. After all, they would have been the first to squeal if a bomb had landed on their house." I found that oddly comforting, right? To know that, you know what? Human beings are gonna be human beings no matter what's going on. And whatever they were, they're gonna be more so. The people who were generous and cared about taking care of others are only gonna do that more. And the people who were selfish and didn't think about the idea of the common good, well, they're gonna continue being like that. Lesson number 4. Schools have a hard time adapting to a large-scale societal crisis. They're not built for that. They do the best that they can, but sometimes the odds are just insurmountable. Back then, by January of 1940, remember, many children had returned to London. But by January of 1940, there was wide disparity about the education that the children were getting. For one thing, the school buildings themselves, many of them were being used for the war effort. There was a shortage of teachers. Some parents were out of work and so were just keeping their children home. They were worried about their kids. And so by January of 1940, it's estimated that about a quarter of the kids were in full-time school. A quarter were doing school part-time. A quarter were homeschooled, and a quarter were not getting any education at all. Maybe after this, there will be lessons that we have learned that will make schools a little bit more nimble when things happen.
Hi, it's Sanjeev again on behalf of the Stewardship Committee with an update on current pledge status. We've collected $110,214 in pledges, which is a smidge under 50% of what we realized last year. So that's really great for just 1 week that the campaign's really been up and roaring. If you've pledged already, thank you so much for getting your pledge in as quickly as you could. For those who haven't pledged, The campaign's still running for a couple weeks. We really encourage you to get your pledge in and encourage you to do it online. You can find the link on the Live Oak website. And I will be back with you next week with a further update. Cheers.
Lesson number 5. The poorest are always the ones that are hit the hardest whenever there's a crisis. It's certainly happening now, and it was happening then. The people on the East End of London, which was the poor area, they were the ones that didn't have access to good shelters. They were near the docks, and so they often were getting the brunt of much of the bombing. They didn't have strong structures that could withstand the fires that other stronger buildings would have survived. And they didn't have the resources to escape. I mean, many of the people, upper middle class and certainly the wealthy, before this even began, they went out to their country homes. But that wasn't an option that those without summer homes could do. There is, I think, always a romantic story whenever an entire society is being affected by something. We'll talk, like we have done in our time, about we're all in the same boat. Except that we're not in all the same boat. As many people have said, we're all in the same ocean, but we are definitely not all in the same boat. And it was the same thing at the time of the Blitz. And a couple of weeks into the beginning of the Blitz, some people decided to push back because the disparity had become really obvious. In the East End, again, you had these Armstrong shelters that they could have protected a family from shrapnel, but no one would have survived a direct hit. And they had a couple of community shelters, but those were not adequate for what they needed. Meanwhile, they found out that on the West End, things were different. And very specifically at the Savoy Hotel. You've probably heard of the Savoy Hotel. Doesn't the name just bring up kind of a posh image? Well, it absolutely was, and that didn't change just because it was wartime. They had a strong shelter underneath that everyone could go down into. It reinforced with steel beams and then little cubicles set up so that all the wealthy people would have a bed and an armchair. There were waiters coming down and serving them delicacies. Pretty different than the people who were trying to huddle underneath a piece of corrugated steel in their backyard, or if they didn't have a backyard, their neighbor's backyard. So some people decided to do something about it, led by the Communist Party, which, again, think of the time that we were in. This was another ideological party that was at work and talking philosophy. They organized, and one evening, about 70 people, including children, went to the Savoy, and with a little bit of help from some sympathetic waiters, they were able to go down into the bunker. Well, you can imagine all of these ruffians coming in. They called the police to try to get them out. The people said, "What are you talking about? It's not safe out there." By this point, the air raid alarm is blowing. And so what are they going to do? Say, go get out in the street? They couldn't do anything. And so they just had to let them spend the night. I believe the people even negotiated to get some bread and butter and hot tea. But this was a protest. That was what it was meant to be. And they wanted to get attention, and attention they did. They got attention worldwide. And so then the government of Great Britain had to step in and make some changes. And that brings me to lesson number 6. Those in power hopefully feel a responsibility to the people of their country, but they are always going to be looking ahead. And some of that is good. And when you go deep into the history of the Blitz, there were some very visionary people who were imagining what would come next after the war. And this led to some significant changes in England. But that is a subject for another sermon that you'll be hearing in November. There were also people, though, government leaders, who were concerned about what it would mean if they gave help to people now. Would those people get used to that? And we're hearing it right now, right, in the debates about the continuing unemployment benefits. One of the specific things that they worried about was this whole issue of how to protect the people during the Blitz, how to shelter them. The people wanted to be able to get down into the subways. I mean, kind of a no-brainer. If bombs are falling on your head, getting underground is one of the smartest things you can do. But government leaders were worried about that. What were going to be the long-term effects of it? They worried that a shelter mentality would take hold, where people would simply refuse to come out of the shelters. They would just stay safe down there. And so what if they allowed people to go down into the subways and people began helping each other and organizing? Remember, government leaders were not only worried about the Nazis, they were worried about this philosophical idea of communism that was taking root. So at first, they had the subways blocked. They put up barriers. They even put police officers to make sure that no one could get down there. But we, the people, in their case, those people, were not having it. They needed to protect themselves. They needed to protect their families. And they came in such crowds that the police really couldn't do anything. And the people tore down the barricades and they streamed into the subways. And finally, and this was happening right after the protest at the Savoy, the government leaders had to come out and say, oh, well, we think it would be a great idea if everyone took shelter in the subways. Perhaps the biggest lesson, if we look back at the Blitz or any other story in history, is this: there is no one story of something happening. There are multiple stories depending on who you were and the power that you had in a society and your particular circumstances. And it doesn't mean that one story is right and one story is wrong. It just means that every story is a little bit incomplete. One of the romantic stories that people in Great Britain will tell about the Blitz is they'll look at it with rose-colored glasses and they'll talk about how unified they were, about how the class distinctions really fell away, and how they all came together with a single-minded purpose. And the thing is, part of that is true. Some of those class distinctions, if the classes were pretty close together already, they did fall away. And people really did make tremendous sacrifices for each other, including the children. And there are other stories that are also true. Many of those poor families that did send their children or pregnant mothers out into the countryside found that they were not really welcomed by those who were more affluent. There was a big difference in how you experienced the Blitz based on how much money you had. The children of wealthy families were sent away to boarding schools. Many of the wealthy people simply left the cities altogether, or if they were there, they were staying at places where they had access to secure, maybe even luxury accommodations. All of these stories can be true at the same time. And we are going to have our stories of the United States during this time. And many of the stories are going to be really different from another group's stories. We have to understand that there can be truth in all of the stories and that they are also incomplete. What will be the story of Live Oak during the pandemic? Based on our past history, I feel comfortable having some confidence that our story is going to be one of grace and generosity and helping each other out and staying connected. We are all stories in the end. Just make it a good one.
I'll be with you in apple blossom time. I'll be with you to claim your name mine. Someday in May, I'll come and say, happiness bright, the sun shines on today. What a wonderful wedding there will be. What a wonderful day for you and me. Church bells will chime, oh, you will be mine in apple blossom time.
I'm gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on moving proudly. Keep on moving proudly. Keep on moving proudly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on singing loudly. Keep on singing loudly. Keep on singing loudly. Gonna keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Never turning back. Never turning back.
shine a light of love. May we shine a light of love. With every thought, with every step we take, may we shine a light of love.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and a big thank you to everyone who helped make this service possible. We absolutely could not do it without you. I hope that you will join us now for our fellowship time. That's going to happen in a Zoom room, and you'll find the link at liveoakuu.org. It's a time where we can all come together and see each other's faces and do kind of a deeper check-in in some small groups. If you're a first-time visitor, don't forget we have a special visitors room just for visitors that is for you to go to. It's another Zoom room. You will find that link at liveoakuu.org. We'll have a couple of members who are there who can answer any questions you might have and get to know you a little bit better too. Here's one more story from the time of the Blitz. You're probably familiar with that sign, "Keep calm and carry on." Maybe you even know that it was designed during World War II. But you may not know this. That sign was never put up. It was printed. It was printed, hundreds of them, but it was never actually put out in public. Instead, there were two other signs that were created at the same time. One said, "Freedom is in peril." The other said, "Your courage, your cheerfulness, your resolution will bring us victory." And those two signs were put everywhere. The reason why the "Keep calm and carry on" sign was never put up was because they were saving it. They were saving it for an eventuality that they hoped and prayed would never happen. If Germany had succeeded and occupied Great Britain, they were going to put those posters up. I myself am trying to have courage and be cheerful because it does affect others, and be firm in my resolution because I do believe that freedom is right now in peril. And I can't imagine an eventuality where perhaps the best thing that we could say to each other would be to keep calm and carry on. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that eventuality doesn't happen. So until then, courage, cheerfulness, and resolution.
Soon the day will arise when we will be together, and no longer will we live in fear. And the children will smile without wondering whether on that day thunder clouds will appear. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see